Prestaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachayane, Nirvishesha Shunyavani Vastyachyane Jitane. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadha, Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. How wonderful to be here with you all, and to be here with all these wonderful devotees on the stage, very special devotees. There's also His Holiness Deva Rita Maharaj, but unfortunately he couldn't make it this evening. But, well, so you will have to come to the BPT conference tomorrow to see Deva Rita Maharaj. Please come. It will be well worth it. So thank you to you all. And thank you to all our special guests who are here. Thank you very much to His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj. His association is of very great value. I remember some years ago, quite a few years ago, he was running the Back to Godhead magazine, which I think you're all familiar with. And he came and visited us in Durban, South Africa, to basically promote Back to Godhead and encourage the devotees to distribute Back to Godhead. And Jayadvaita Maharaj came in and said, yes, I have come to take you all back to Godhead. So, in more ways than one. So how nice to be here with Maharaj and the other devotees. I remember one experience I had with Srila Prabhupada, or actually there were a few experiences at one time. It was in a darshan of Srila Prabhupada's one afternoon, like maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon, in Bhaktivedanta Manor, near London, in England. So Srila Prabhupada was there, and in the afternoons he would have these sessions like, sort of like question and answer sessions, and he would speak some things to whoever would come. And there was just a small number of us there. There may have been 10 or 12 or 13. There was not a lot of devotees there. But Srila Prabhupada was speaking very freely and in a very clear way. Of course, he always spoke very clearly, but it was like he was speaking in very definitive ways. And one devotee asked a question. He said, Srila Prabhupada, in Nectar of Devotion, there is a chapter which talks about the different offenses. There's a whole list, and in fact there's a few lists of offenses of different sorts. The first offense mentioned there is, don't enter the temple room in a palanquin or wearing shoes. I don't expect any or many of you to think of entering the temple room in a palanquin, but certainly not with shoes also. So there are all these different offenses. First of all, there's a list of maybe 30-something. Then there's another list of perhaps 30 or so. And then Srila Prabhupada lists out the 10 offenses to the chanting of the holy names, beginning with blaspheming the devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. So anyway, this devotee, actually what he did, he read a little excerpt from that chapter in which Srila Prabhupada says, if you commit the first, there's like maybe 60 or so, 2 lists of roughly 30 offenses before the 10 offenses. Prabhupada says to the effect that if you commit any of those offenses, the 60 or so, then you can overcome the reactions to them by chanting Hare Krishna. So the devotee read that, and you can read it, it's there, it's in Nectar of Devotion, it's something like chapter 7 or 8 or something like that. So then the devotee read on, and he read the 10 offenses, and at the end of the list of the 10 offenses, Srila Prabhupada makes this point: if you commit the other offenses, you can overcome the reactions by just chanting Hare Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada then says that if you commit any of the 10 offenses in chanting Hare Krishna, you cannot escape the reactions. Prabhupada makes this point, perhaps not in exactly those words, but it's very much to that effect. So this devotee then, he read that, and then he asked his question. He said, Srila Prabhupada, isn't there some way to overcome the reactions to the 10 offenses in the chanting of the holy names, beginning with blaspheming the devotees? Isn't there some way to overcome those offenses? Srila Prabhupada then gave that devotee one of his long, very focused, very penetrating looks. He just looked at him, and you could feel the look, even sitting on the side some little bit away. You could feel, and immediately the mind started saying, wow, what's going to happen now? Prabhupada was obviously concerned. So he looked at this devotee for some seconds, and then he said to the devotee, you are asking this question because you want to offend. Oh, talk about, wow, it was amazing. I was sitting there, I could hardly believe it. It was just so powerful, so cutting, to the point. You are asking this question because you want to offend. And then you want to do something, just do something to escape the reactions. But Prabhupada said, no, don't think like that. Prabhupada said, you must stop offending. No more offenses. And this devotee was really sort of pinned to the wall by Srila Prabhupada's response. No more offenses. So it was very interesting and very revealing, because at least one point or one perspective, since that time, that was perhaps 1974, at the very latest it was 1975. So since that time, there's been a lot of talk amongst devotees in ISKCON about offences and what to do about them and so on like that. And of course it's a very important discussion. And even Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Harinam Chintamani, he talks about some things you might be able to do to overcome the reactions to the 10 offences. But Srila Prabhupada's point was, no more offences. And we must all think like that if we commit any offense, it's not good enough. It's not sufficient just to say, well, you know, I'll say sorry or something like that. Of course, we must also say sorry, but the real answer is no more offences. That struck me very, very deeply, and I remember it vividly to this day. Then, during the same session, the same darshan, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada a question about meat eating. Although it was presented in a certain way, it is what some of us call a what-if question. What if some fantastic circumstances are there? What if, you know, what do you do then? Some extraordinary situation. So basically the devotee's question was, what if you are in such a situation and there is just nothing to eat? Just nothing. Like, you know, you're on a desert island. You ate all the grass, whatever grass there was, whatever seaweed you could get out of the ocean, and that's it. There's nothing there. All there is some animal and you. So this was the basic orientation of the question. And the devotee asked Prabhupada, so, what if you're in such a situation? Would it be all right then to eat meat if there's just nothing else? And that's it. And Srila Prabhupada again, he looked at that devotee, and I remember actually he looked at me too. And he turned to the devotee and said, the devotee would rather die than eat meat. Yeah. The devotee would rather die. Then, a devotee in the same darshan, another devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, well, it's sort of a whatever, I guess. If you're living in a temple and you're doing service in the temple and you do something wrong, make some mistake, something like that. And so there'll be some reactions. Prabhupada said yes. And the devotee said, but what if you are preaching, doing book distribution and preaching, and you do something wrong? Some same sort of mistake. If you are preaching and out distributing books and trying to spread the movement and you do something wrong, will there also be some reaction like if you're living in a temple and you do something wrong? And Srila Prabhupada answered that if you're living in a temple and you do something wrong, there'll be some reaction. If you are preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness and you do something wrong, there may be some reaction also. But because you're preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness, Krishna will take away the reaction. He'll minimize the reaction. So it will not be the same. as if you're in, you could say, a relatively more comfortable situation. And just having to contend with the other devotees, which is sometimes a challenge anyway. But as opposed to dealing with the non-devotees, particularly in the Western world, my gosh, Krishna really appreciates that sacrifice, that surrender, that effort the devotee makes, going out and preaching to the non-devotees and dealing with all the myriad different difficult situations, and even sometimes disturbing situations, sometimes being abused verbally or maybe even sometimes physically. So Prabhupada made that point. It was very interesting. Then, same darshan. And now Prabhupada had been speaking a little bit about book distribution preaching, as we mentioned. Then one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, what should we say when we're distributing books? What should we say to the people? And Prabhupada laughed or chuckled. And Srila Prabhupada did a really amazing thing. You know what Prabhupada did? I'll show you. Prabhupada stood up. He was sitting down behind his low desk. We were all sitting down. Prabhupada stood up, picked up a book. One of his books was sitting there. Prabhupada took the book and gave it to one, or went and approached one of the devotees. Please don't mind, I'll make it you. So he went up to the devotee and handed him the book. And then Prabhupada quoted Prabodhananda Saraswati. It's a famous verse of his. Prabodhananda Saraswati, he was a great devotee back in the times of Lord Chaitanya, basically. So, Prabhupada Saraswati says he's preaching to a non-devotee, and Prabhupada repeated those words. He said, my dear sir, here, take this book. He said, actually, my dear sir, you look extremely intelligent. See? It's true. And he is. It's really true. You look extremely intelligent. Actually, I think you are the most intelligent person I have met all day. So, Prabhupada said, so my request to you, dear sir, is you please forget all your nonsense and read this book. It was, Srila Prabhupada, among other things, had an incredible sense of humor. And the way he did it, it was kind of like in a mischievous way. So, yeah, these are some things I remember. It was actually just from one experience, one particular darshan, that I was present with Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was such an amazing character. There's so many things. This is a Prabhupada night. We're intending finishing, I don't know, sort of whenever like 9 or 10 o'clock, perhaps something like that. But we could actually, if we wanted, we could have a Prabhupada night until Mongol Arati time tomorrow morning, because Prabhupada was such an amazing person. His character was so transcendental and so transcendentally multifaceted in all different types of situations. Prabhupada would come across so brilliantly in Krishna consciousness. It was just astounding. And yeah, so I could just go on and on and on. But Srila Prabhupada, we should remember, he is the one who did it. He actually spread Krishna consciousness. You know, for people like me, I come and visit you here in Mauritius. You're already devotees. I have many nice places to stay and people to cook for me and all that. So, you know, it's not a challenge in many ways. Prabhupada came on his own. He was already 70 years old. To a foreign environment and no one ready to go to, just one rather extraordinary couple initially, just somewhere outside New York. And he came single-handedly at that age and established the Krishna consciousness movement from nothing, from zero, and created this big, massive movement all over the world. So Prabhupada did it. He actually did it. He was not just some passenger being carried along, you know, in some devotee society and something like that. He did it. He established it. And that is so special. That is extremely special. Prabhupada gave the example of Christopher Columbus. I don't know if you've heard of him. He so-called discovered America. Of course, there are already people living there. So, but anyway, you know what the Europeans are like. They're always ready to pat themselves on the back. So he was the first European, at least, to reach America. And then he came back to Spain or wherever he was from, and he was celebrated as a bit of a hero. But then he had some detractors, and they said, "Oh, anybody could have done that. I mean, gosh, you just sit on a boat and just sit there. After a little while, you arrive on the other side. What's the big deal? Anybody could have done that." And Prabhupada told the story. Christopher Columbus then took an egg. Now, we don't deal in eggs, but just for the sake of the example, and Prabhupada gave the example, Christopher Columbus gave this egg to these detractors, these people who are criticizing him, and said, stand it up on its end, so it stands upright, and you know, not just lying sideways. And they got a bit bewildered and tried to stand it up, but of course it fell over every time. And then Christopher Columbus said, okay, I'll show you, I'll do it. He took the egg, tapped it on the bottom, so it sort of crushed it slightly at the bottom, and now the bottom little bit is flat, and he stood it up. And the people said, oh, anybody could have done that. And Christopher Columbus said, yeah, that's true, but I didn't. So people may try to compare themselves to Prabhupada or encourage others directly or indirectly to compare them to Prabhupada. But for those who understand, it can't work, because we know Prabhupada did it. He really did it. And in the process of doing it, he saved us. He saved us. So we all owe everything to Srila Prabhupada. And let us surrender at his lotus feet and dedicate our lives to him. Hare Krishna.